Now, I'm not one to gossip, but I will bring you the tea. Welcome to Chronicle Speaks.
Please, I don't have any time for any gossip now. Eh? Yes.
Look at you.
Sometimes I wish I could be a publicist because it would be certain times that I would just tell my client,
Sit your $5 ass down before I make change.
Diddy is said to have told his family,
after the verdict was read, I'm coming home, baby.
and that is true. Diddy is coming home. He was cleared of RICO, which is the most serious charge, as well as SEX trafficking of Cassie Ventura and SEX trafficking of Jane. However, Diddy was found guilty of 2 charges of transportation for prostitution, one for Cassie and one for Jane, which is an anonymous witness, taking them across state lines with the intent to engage in prostitution or unlawful sexual activity. Now, both of those charges carry a maximum of 10 years in prison each, so that's a total of 20. And today at 5:00 p.m., the judge went over possible sentencing guidelines, as well as denying Diddy his bond, which we will go over. And Judge Subramanian also set up a date for the sentencing hearing. We are going to get into this case and so much more, but before we do, please be sure to subscribe to this channel and hit the bell for notifications so you don't miss out on any news regarding this case and so much more. Now let's get back into it. So today in the United States versus Sean Combs, count 1 of racketeering conspiracy, which was the count they were kind of up in the air about yesterday, he was found not guilty. Count 2, SEX trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion of Cassie, not guilty. Count 3, transportation to engage in prostitution of Cassie, guilty. Count 4, SEX trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion of Jane, not guilty. And then count 5, transportation to engage in prostitution of Jane, guilty. And a lot of people are saying it's kind of contradictory that he was found not guilty of SEX trafficking. However, he was found guilty of transporting for the purpose of prostitution. But note this, to convict someone of SEX trafficking, the government had to prove did he use force, fraud, or coercion, or the victim was underage and he knowingly caused them to engage in a commercial SEX act. The jury did not believe Diddy coerced the 2 women, and they did not feel that those women were controlled in the way that the law defines as trafficking. However, the transportation of prostitution, this charge only required the jury to believe Diddy knowingly transported someone across state lines with the intent that that person engage in prostitution, even if the person agreed or if it was consensual. This is a lot easier to prove and doesn't require force or coercion. Bottom line, the jury believed Diddy moved women across state lines for SEX. That's why he was found guilty of the prostitution-related charges, which were the lesser of the 5. Okay, so the judge told everyone to come back in at 5:00 p.m., and they did. At 4:59 in the courtroom, Combs' lawyer Brian Steele and Jason Driscoll are patting each other on the back. Agnifilo is in the holding cell with Combs, and his family is on the second row of the gallery. At 5:04 p.m., Combs' lawyer Agnifilo, Alexandra Shapiro, and Tini Garagos emerged from the holding cell, still waiting for Sean Combs to be brought into the courtroom by the U.S. Marshals. At 5:09, Sean Combs was brought back in. He sits next to Tini Garagos and he is reading. Agnifilo walks over to the lectern, then back over to his seat. Prosecutors are in place at the front table, waiting on Judge Subramanian. Judge says, I have read the party submissions and others. The jury convicted the defendant of count 3 and count 5 for the following reasons. Bail is denied. So you remember Diddy was asking for bail. He was asking for $1 million bail at that, and the judge is saying no. Now let's get into why. The judge says even if the defendant was solely required to show that he is not a danger to the community, he could not meet that burden. Prior to the trial, the court denied bail and sees no reason to reverse that now. The defense concedes the defendant's violence. He's violent. His violence is depicted in the video of Cassie Ventura. The defense admitted this is a terrible moment. Domestic violence is the issue, is what she said. It wasn't only that, there was the London hotel incident. There was violence after the searches in the case, as to Jane. There was the June 2024 after the searches of Combs' residence. This evidence shows a disregard for the law and a propensity for violence. The court takes no position on what it will consider at sentencing, nor what sentence it will impose. But here, the burden is on him and he cannot carry it. The defense argues the guidelines start at 21 months. The U.S. says 51 months. He's done 10 months. I set sentencing for Friday, October 3rd at 10:00 p.m. I am willing to expedite it. Agnifilo says we would like it expedited. Judge says we will need an expedited pre-sentencing report from probation, but I will be available anytime. There's a great divide on the sentencing guideline. I see that Ms. Comey has her status book open. Comey says the rule required the preparation of a report absent a reasoned waiver. Probation may be able to expedite. Judge says update me by July 8 at noon. And we'll hold a hearing on the afternoon of July 8. Ignifilo says Your Honor has a lot of information from presiding over the trial. We want the sentencing as soon as possible. Other Mann Act cases, there's nothing remotely similar to this. The cases were reviewed involving defendants making money, millions, or involved minors. That's different. Here are the facts from our letter. And they're showing case law United States versus Dillon. Ignifilo says there was this Imperial Club case of a former governor of New York. We understand this is moving quickly. The issue for us is if we'd have more time, we could have shown extraordinary circumstances. Judge says you can see violence in your closing. Whether that's relevant to sentencing is not for today, but it can be considered on a bail application. Ignifilo says in June 2024, there was an argument that Mr. Combs was defending himself. Mr. Combs tried to get into a batterer's program in New York. The jury never heard that. Then he got arrested. All these months later, here we are, the same drive to meet that head on, like the self-respecting businessman he is. He's been a model prisoner. There have been no issues. He's going to have next chapters of his life. When you're charged with racketeering, you have dark talks. When I was reading the Mia messages for his birthday, I had a hard time doing it. His children are here. His 2 daughters are in the middle of the second row. They no longer have a living mother. Here, the user of prostitution services has been convicted under the Mann Act. He was acquitted of violence for sex trafficking. He wants to talk to you. Let me check. Judge says, okay, check. Ms. Comey? Ms. Comey says his brazenness is almost unmatched. To suggest it was self-defending is insulting. He slapped her in the shoulder. He had drugs in his New York City hotel room. He invited Jane. Ignifilo says we could draft conditions. Would the court be open to us putting together the bail package? I am happy to do that, Judge. Judge says the bail application is denied. We'll receive hopefully a joint proposal on expedited sentencing on Tuesday and a hearing at 2:00 p.m. Court is now adjourned. So to give a little context on the sentencing range, because a lot of people are wondering how long could Diddy actually get. So according to the government, they calculated his preliminary sentencing range based on the federal sentencing guidelines. The offense level they gave him is 24 with no criminal history and no prior record. The sentencing table gives 51 to 63 months as a minimum. The government says this is the minimum and they may seek more enhancements before sentencing, especially for coercion, which could add 4 more levels, potentially increasing the range from 78 to 97 months, which would be 6.5 years to 8 years. And I'll leave you with this message from Cassie Ventura's lawyer, Douglas Wigdor. He says the entire criminal process started when our client, Cassie Ventura, had the courage to file her civil complaint in November 2023. Although the jury did not find Combs guilty of sex trafficking Cassie Ventura beyond a reasonable doubt, she paved the way for a jury to find him guilty of transportation of prostitution by coming forward with her experience. Cassie has left an indelible mark on both the entertainment industry and the fight for justice. We must repeat with no reservation that we believe and support our client, who showed exemplary courage throughout the trial. She displayed unquestionable strength and brought attention to the realities of powerful men in our orbit and the misconduct that has persisted for decades without repercussions. This case proved that change is long overdue, and we will still continue to fight on behalf of survivors. What do you think about everything going on with the Diddy trial and the verdict? I already know Shapiro is filing that appeal as we speak. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think. Do you think he's going to do the possible 6 to 7 years, or do you think it's going to be a lot shorter? Leave a comment. You know how we do. We'll talk about it down below. Talk to you guys later. Bye. As always, thanks for watching. But before you go, don't forget to subscribe to this channel, like this video, and hit the bell so you don't miss out on any of my new episodes.